Welcome back to Genesis, chapter 22. Actually, kind of a convenient place to stop last May, because it's kind of it's the closing of a major segment in the history of redemption. We'll get back to that. But anyway, first of all, never passing up an opportunity to divert myself from the matter at hand. I got this article in my Google feed. It's funny how many times I get articles recommended to me from Google or videos from YouTube that the people who do that work would be irreconcilably opposed to. And this would be another example. But this is SciTech Daily. Robert, have you ever heard of this? Me neither. They are certainly not creationists. At any rate, this is August 31st, 2025. And the math says life shouldn't exist. Does? I thought we solved that problem. New study challenges origins theories. We're still trying to solve that problem, the origin problem. The double helix was discovered 1954. I don't remember exactly, 59, back in the 50s. So I'm 62 and I was born in I'm 63, I was born in 62. So you do the math, we're talking 70 years ago. But apparently we're still trying to figure this out, having trouble getting our feet in the water, or our feet, getting traction for our feet on the question of life's origins. There was a book written by Walter Bradley and what's the guy's name? I forget the other guy's name, called The Mystery of Life's Origin, which was late 1980s. It's an excellent, and I recommend it to everybody that deals with these issues. There's also one by Stephen Meyer, who's on YouTube. You can see him, world class. I forget what field he's in, but he wrote a book called The Signature in the Cell. Deals with a lot of this kind of stuff. But anyway, here's the article. The study faces severe mathematical challenges. We knew this in the 60s. I've talked about the Wistar Institute's symposium back in the 60s. I'm still trying to find the minutes of it. I looked again and I can't find it. We're a bunch of evolutionists and mathematicians, not a creationist in the room. All evolutionists, mathematicians, world-class names, every one of them. Bantered back and forth and argued about the numbers, and the mathematicians were saying the numbers don't work out. It's a math problem. And the evolutionists accused them of being creationists, because that's what you do when you get challenged. You do name calling. So, saying somebody's a creationist is more than just describing their beliefs. It's name calling, really. In their minds, it's a pejorative term, right? It's an epithet. It's a slanderous thing you say to somebody to quiet them, So they call them. They basically call them. You're sounding like a creationist. No, we're not. Back and forth. If I can ever find the thing, I'm gonna have to go to the library and get it. But anyway. New study addresses one of science's most enduring questions. How did life first arise from non-living matter on the early Earth? That is the question. I agree. Anybody who thinks that problem has gone away or even been mitigated at all, just not paying attention. Let's see, Imperial College of London, Bill Framer indicating that the spontaneous emergence of life may have been far more difficult than previously thought. No, if you ever thought that the spontaneous origin of life was not difficult, then again, you should probably look at the data. The immense challenge of generating structural biological information, that's the key word right there, information, not order, but information. Under realistic prebiotic conditions, that's correct, underscoring how unlikely it would have been for the first living cell to appear naturally. We're going to look at that in a second. Think of it like trying to write an article about the origin of life for a well-known science website like this one. By randomly throwing letters at a page, he's not far off on that. The chances of success become astronomically small. We're going to look at that in a second as the required complexity increases. And we'll see why in just a second. And then this is their latest thing. This is where life emerged in their minds from thermal vents on the surface of the ocean, where complexity apparently is more likely to arise. I don't know. It's also why they hope for life under the crust of moons like Titan and Europa, because they think there's liquid water there, and there's thermal vents that are heating that water and therefore producing the conditions for life, so forth. But anyway, he does this. It's the usual thing. That chance alone combined with natural chemical reactions may not sufficiently account for the origin of life. Within the limited time frame of early Earth, it is very, very limited. It's not a long time. It's very limited. We'll look at that. Systems generally move toward disorder rather than order. Yes, that's exactly right. As soon as a protein comes into being, it gets destroyed by the harsh conditions around it. You have to remove the protein from the harsh conditions. You have to do work on the system to preserve the protein. That's the requirement. So serious barrier, you can see the language, the phrases used to describe this. Highly structured arrangements face serious barriers. Hope against hope. Does not imply that the emergence of life was impossible. Current knowledge may be lacking. So, now we're talking about this kind of thing, which is, I believe, life from another planet. Is that right? Yeah. So we're just going to offload the problem to the next we're going to outsource the problem to another civilization where they can deal with the design problem and the complexity problem, but not here on Earth. Okay. All right. Well, I guess the hunt goes on. So you can see it's a remarkably honest take on the current situation. So now you go to the comments. Let's see. So now we're gonna actually indulge the alien thing. Let's just assume that the extraterrestrials seeded the Earth to begin life. How did the extraterrestrials there we go, begin? And if they were seeded, how did they begin? So on and so forth. In the words of the Stephen Hawking analogy in his book, A Brief History of Time, what is this turtle resting on? Well, he's resting on a turtle. What's that turtle resting on? Well, he's resting on a turtle. Well, what's he resting on? And the lady says, oh, young man, it's turtles all the way down. And that's what we're talking about here.
Yesterday, I listened to an interview between Christian Canadian apologist Calvin Smith and the Grok 4 AI intelligence thing. And he would give it parameters, mathematical parameters, and the probability of life existing was next to nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
But then if he takes away those parameters and just asks, how did life begin? Then the Grok thing will quote what the scientists say.
Yeah, I can tell you that the prevailing, what do you want to call it? Creation story. I can quote you their Genesis 1. And I can mock them for their Genesis 1 in exactly the same way as they mock me for my Genesis 1, maybe even more so. So, you have your Genesis 1, the primordial soup, the prebiotic earth, for which there's no evidence, and I have my Genesis 1. So, we're on level ground here. Your Genesis 1 is no more scientific than my Genesis 1.
Back in the 1990s, when I was attending First Baptist of Rochester, Tom Thompson's the pastor, and one summer we had a lot of very intelligent people at the church there, and several were scientists, and so he gave them opportunities on Sunday nights to share some things from their own specialty. One guy talked about statistics, saying that it's statistically far more probable that a tornado could go through a junkyard and the outcome will be a 747 than for the Earth to have been created by a cosmic boom.
I think that was Frederick Hoyle, the great mathematician, who came up with that, who was an atheist. I don't think he died an atheist. A lot of these guys didn't die atheists. They numbers got to him, but Hoyle I think it was Hoyle. Somebody can look it up if they want, whether Hoyle did the jumbo jet analogy.
I don't know who it was, but that was mind-boggling
Yeah.
to hear that.
So anyway, we get to the bottom of this, the comments, they go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Good old Frank. Haven't you people had any better things to do with your time? But my answer is actually, no. You keep bringing it up. I'm not bringing it up. You keep bringing it up. So, no, we don't have better things to do with our time. The creationists won't give up. And that's just the way, until you answer the question, it's not going away. That's all there is to it. Okay, so let's look at Laura's name. I'm picking on Laura today. What about this math problem? The impossibility. Here's Laura's name.
That's a math problem.
Suppose he mentioned trying to create that article that he was writing through randomly hitting strokes on a keyboard or something like that, right? That was in the article. It's what's that? Throwing letters at a page. That was his. Well, this is it. Here's 5 letters. Imagine you have 5 bins of little blocks of of each letter of the alphabet. They're on little cards or something. 1 letter per. How many letters in the alphabet?
26.
There's 26 letters in the alphabet. So you have 5 little bins of 20. Let's make them little cubes so they're easier to pick up. And they're just jumbled up, 5 different bins. And you're going to reach into the first one and you're going to pull out an L. What are the odds you're going to pull out an L?
26.
1 out of 26. Now you're going to reach into the second one and you're going to pull out an A. What are the odds you're going to pull out the A? 1 in 26. What are the odds you're going to pull out an L and then an A?
That is what, 1 in 52 probably.
Not 1 in 52. Much bigger number.
Much bigger. Okay.
Now you're going to reach in and pull out a U. What are the odds?
26.
What are the odds you're going to do an L, A, U in a row? Now we add the R. Now we add the A. That's the odds. You do that multiplication. Those are the odds.
That's not.
That's just math. The odds you're going to produce Laura with 5 bins is that. And what is that? That's 26 to the 5th power. And what is that? 1 over 11,881,376. In other words, you're going to do that the rest of your life and not pull out Laura. It's winning the lottery. What are the odds of winning the lottery?
Greater than that.
They look like this sort of thing. All right. So let's translate this now to the complexity problem of just proteins. The human body is made up of proteins. How many proteins are there? I don't know, but I think there's like 66 that are required or something like, doesn't matter. We're just going to deal with 1. How big are proteins? Well, I looked it up. I can't believe I'm using AI, but I used AI. Proteins are made up of amino acid chains. How many amino acids are there? There are 20. So the same math applies. If you have a protein that's a chain of amino acids, what are the odds you're going to get the right amino acid in the first one? 1 in 20. And then the second one, 1 in 20. And then the third one, and then the fourth one. Well, how long are these amino acid chains? We're just going to go with AI. We'll call it 300. The average protein is 300 amino acids. So take one that's 300 amino acids.
1 in 20.
1 in 20 times 1 in 20 times 1 in 20, and so on and so forth. That's the odds you're going to get the average protein. Well, we already saw that 1 in 26 was over 11, was almost 12 million. What do you think the number 20 to the 300th power looks like? Well,
I bet we might have to work for it.
Well, let me give you a hint. 1 in 10 to the 50, 10 to the 50th is considered infinite in math. If you try to do 10, your calculator will quickly say, I can't calculate. But let's go to the longest one. What's the longest protein out there in the human body? I looked it up. Titin, this one here, appropriately named, spelled different. More than 34,000 amino acids. So what are the odds that you're going to make a Titin protein?
1 in 344,000.
No. That's the point. 20 to the 34,000th power.
That's a number that there's no word for.
Well, let's do it. Let's calculate the number because it's 2025 and people think of these things because they got nothing better to do. Frank wants people to find something better to do. Well, they don't have things better to do, so they make a calculator. So here's the LoRa one. 1.1, whatever it is. 11,881,000. That's the number right there. That's 26 to the 5th. Well, let's just do 20 amino acids with a chain of 34,000. Let's do 300 and let's do the 300 first. There's 300. That's the number.
Okay, I can't even read that number.
You know, there's no number. There's no, we lose it at, what's the biggest numbers we even talk about? No, it's, there's a name for the biggest ones, but you get above them and they become meaningless because they don't exist. Nothing of that magnitude exists in the universe. So, to give you some sense of scale, I think there's been 10 to the 18th seconds in the universe. So let's do 34,000. I needed the large exponents calculator, not the exponents calculator. There's two of them. One to the 44,235th. What does that number look like?
It's a lot of numbers. I'm waiting for the zeros.
And now, look at the scroll bar. Then you get down here and now it's just, we just can't do it anymore. So it's just zeros.
My question is, who came up with a calculator that can make you figure this out?
I don't know.
Somebody that had a lot of time during COVID.
So it's a lot of zeros, man. Look at them zeros. I'm gonna do it just for the sake of doing it. Look at them zeros. Anyway, what's the point? No, I'm going all the way down. I'm committed.
Why is it to me?
There you go. Finally got to the end. Now I gotta get to the
Check
thing.
out how many zeros. No, that would take too long. We want to get the first study.
So, you know, I mean,
It's absurdity is really what it is.
color me a skeptic.
Yeah.
You keep saying it and I'm going, you yourselves marvel at the complexity of life and then you poo-poo it when you try to explain it. And the mathematicians just run the numbers and they're looking at complexity. And this is just to come up with proteins. And it's not like there's one of them. So, you know, random mutation by natural selection, there's random mutations. How many random mutations does it, if this is a 1 to the 44th power problem, that's the right one. How many iterations do you have to go through to get to the right one? Of 1 to the 44,000th power. A lot more than 1 to the 44,000th. So we've only got, you know, we'll be gracious and say 4 billion years. We're giving you 4 billion, we're here. I mean, it's the anthropic principle, right? We're here. It appears as if the universe was designed with humans in mind. That's a that's a crappy way of saying the anthropic principle with human life in mind. So, you can't even get the proteins, let alone the complexity of a cell with information. DNA, that's a different problem. I don't know. Whatever. There you are. I told myself I was going to stop saying whatever. All right. Anybody want to say anything about all that? Maybe I'll get blasted in the comments now.
That's how important the biblical time of creation is. It's the only true answer.
Why is an appeal to the divine creator more absurd than an appeal to chemical evolution?
Because Satan's blind.
What? You tell me why. I want the scientific, I want you to explain, bring in all the philosophers in all the world and all the scientists and all the mathematicians, and somebody explain to me why belief in a divine creator is more absurd. It's this, I don't know, it's,
Well, we're told in the Bible that no human can understand the mind of God. And, so a lot of this comes down to the fact that since they don't understand God, they don't want to believe in God. That's how we become two gods through faith. And so they just want to come up with their own theories because they don't understand God.
there's a pride element to this. Once you acknowledge a creator, you acknowledge your own place before him. You kneel before a creator, and there's nothing you can do about it. You suddenly have a king and a master, and there's nothing you can do about it. And you get no say, in spite of what everybody thinks. He does what he will. Our Lord is in the heavens. He does whatever he pleases. Is that how it goes? The psalm?
Yeah,
He does whatever he pleases. What's that? Is it
my
really?
passage this morning.
Okay, good. Well, now you can discuss probabilities and statistics.
Look like
Uh,
that. I remember sitting in, I spent one semester at the University of Connecticut taking some general ed classes, and I enjoyed philosophy was in all those classes. And I remember the professor saying that Darwin destroyed the teleological argument for the existence of God, and I said, no, I didn't.
they did the opposite.
He did that.
They did the opposite. Once they focused attention on the complexity of life, they made everybody realize how unsolvable the problem is.
It's the only answer.
So I'm not supposed, Gary, you can't, that was one of the points in that SciTech Daily comments. Well, you can't just have faith. And my response is, you do. What do you mean I can't? Are you telling me your faith in the math is less than my faith in the creator? What are you talking about? It violates your own math principles. We've only got 4.5 billion years to work with. The numbers you need are staggering for the numbers of proteins that need and the length of them that need to be. That's just proteins. And it's not like you have all of the 4.5 billion years to get to the complexity of a human being. When did they say the humans came into existence? Oh, and that's another thing. Well, let me get to this thing first. When did they say? I don't know. It's several hundred million. I don't know when it is. Somebody can look it up on the internet, but it ain't 4.5 billion. So really, you only have that. But they go back and forth about how did the first two beings, how did your first two humans procreate? Because there weren't any others and so forth. And my response is very simple. How did yours? How did yours do it? You have a creation story that results in two humans. Two humans. not suddenly 80,000 of them, 2 humans. You have an Adam and an Eve. I have an Adam and Eve. Why is your Adam and Eve more scientific than my Adam and Eve? Or more compelling? We both have an Adam and Eve. But now I'm ranting. I feel like I'm talking to myself in a mirror.
So,
This is. All right, back to the text. We have been talking about Genesis. So Laura, that's your name. Who's got the longest name in here? Everybody's got short names in here. Michelle, yeah. 7. So put multiply by 26 twice more. 8, 3 times more. So now you're into the billions for Michelle's name. All right, that's enough of that. This is where we've been. We've been talking about, we're in Genesis chapter 22. And we now have the beginnings of a redemptive family, in a sense, with Abraham and Sarah, and then Isaac has been born in 21. And then in 22, there's an immediate, so it's the great fulfillment, really, of the promise in the covenant in 12 and 15. An heir for Abraham. That has really been the great threat to the covenant promise. And with the birth of Isaac, because God is not taking no for an answer. He's not settling for second. He's not got a plan B. It's not going to be Ishmael. It's not going to be Eleazar, his servant, or any of the other servants in his house. It's going to be the firstborn of Sarah. That's it. So they waited it out, and in chapter 21, we see the birth of Isaac, and then immediately in chapter 22, we see a threat now that promise will then come to ruin, because God now, the one who promised Isaac and delivered him, so to speak, now orders Abraham to sacrifice him on an altar. So Abraham gathers it up. He gathers up his strength. He takes Isaac and he heads to the mountain where he will do it. And you get some hints there that he thinks that he's coming back with Isaac, although it's very shadowy. And maybe part of the reason it's shadowy is it needs to be, because otherwise it's not real. It's a real threat to the covenant, because the covenant promise, because Abraham will do it. The angel had to grab him and stop, or not grab him, but yell at him to stop. He was in the act. He wasn't bluffing. He was going to do it. And the angel stopped him. And he stopped him with the words, "Now I know." So you had that, statement in 15 where God says that when God promises, let's go back and look at it again. Actually, it's not, what chapter is it? Abraham believed God.
Yeah.
Is that 15?
I think 15:6, so.
All right, so here you see it. Abraham points out, I'm childless, and Eliezer is my heir. I got nothing. You've given me no offspring. This man shall not be your heir. Your very own son shall be your heir, and it will not be, what's the other guy's name?
Yeah.
The other son that will not be? Ishmael. Then he takes him outside. So shall your offspring be. The promise of an heir. The covenant that comes up in chapter 15 in just a little bit is preceded by the promise of an heir. They are directly connected together. As the promise to the heir goes, so does the covenant promise, because the covenant promise just is what? What is the covenant promise?
your ear will be. So. Even that, well, will continue the covenant.
What specifically does God promise in the covenant in chapter 15? It's very specific.
You see from next class?
Land, yes. Exemplified, manifested in land, this land that Abraham is standing on. That's the covenant promise. But if there's no heir, then there's nobody to inherit the land. So there has to be an heir. So we see that resolved in chapter 21. It's now still 6 chapters away. So for 6 chapters, we wonder what's going to go on. And then finally in chapter 21, he has Isaac. And so there's an heir. And then immediately the threat of extinguishing the heir and the threat of extinguishing the promise once again. So here you have Abraham believed the Lord, and it was reckoned, that's the little one, that's the big one, Yahweh, which will be retranslated by Paul to God. Abraham believed God, and it was reckoned to him as righteousness in Romans 4. But this is Yahweh, and he reckoned it, counted it to him, considered him righteous for believing him. And then the covenant happens, and he makes this statement right here. Know for certain that your offspring will be strangers in a land that is not theirs. Not this land. He doesn't name it. It's going to be Egypt. They will be afflicted for 400 years. I'm going to bring them back to this land. But know for certain that he says here, he believed the Lord. So now a covenant is made after he believes the Lord. And in the covenant, know for certain, you, Abraham, know for certain that I will. So on and so forth. Now we come to 22. Now God knows something. In chapter 15, Abraham believed God and it was reckoned to him for righteousness. Now God enters the picture here. Now he says, the voice of the angel, now I know that you fear God. So we wait 7 chapters for that confirmation of Abraham believed God. And it comes in this act of obedience to which God responds, now I know that you're mine, that you fear me, because you did not withhold your son, your only son, over and over again. Remember, we talked about this. Take your son, your only son, Isaac, redundant. Take your son, he's only got one, your only son, whom you love, and offer him up as a burnt offering. And now it is because you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me.
So in God's mind, then Ishmael was not his son. He's his own.
This is 22, he's gone. Yeah, he's been
kicked out, I know that.
Yeah.
part.
He doesn't, in that sense, he doesn't exist. Although, here's the thing though. He's gonna come back.
Yeah, at Abraham's death.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. He's gonna come back and help bury. He's gonna join Isaac in burying Abraham.
I think it's mentioned that the sons of Keturah came back.
No, just Ishmael, yeah. No, he would have a reason, the author would have a reason. That's fulfillment too. Ishmael is also a part of the fulfillment of the story of Abraham. Because he promises, it's a long part of the story, when God promises to Hagar and to Abraham that Ishmael is going to be fine. I have made promises because he's your son. And he makes promises to Hagar and to Abraham about Ishmael. And so when you see him return, and even in some other instances, isn't it the Ishmaelites that Joseph gets sold to?
Yes.
So, they're out there and they're prospering, and that little part of the narrative where Ishmael comes back, that's a confirmation that God is blessing Ishmael. Okay. And I think that I got us and listened to it this morning. There was no hint in the stream last week that I ever acknowledged that was going to be our last week for 3 months. I kept saying next week we're going to pick up with, we're going to do this and that, and then I didn't. We went into something else.
We didn't meet last week.
No, I mean,
We last.
yeah, we didn't. That's right. It was twice wrong. Well, first of all, the week next week we didn't meet at all. That was Memorial Day, and then even when we did, we weren't going to be doing Genesis for 3 months. That's not the first time I've done that. Okay. Let's see. So he restates the promise in 16, 17. He's going to do it again with Isaac and then with Jacob. We'll look at that. I will surely bless you and I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven. We're right back to chapter 12. Right? That's the opening. Look at the parallel. Go forth from your country and from your kindred and from your father's house, the land which I will show. I will make you great, and I will bless and make your name great. And in you all, let's see, where's the multiply as the stars of heaven? A little farther down.
Sand of the seashore. 17, I don't see the stars of heaven Muslim. I
Hang on,
think that's chapter 12.
no sand either. I thought it was in here.
Sand is in here. Oh, no, it is here. Verse 17, indeed, I will greatly bless you, and I will greatly multiply your seed as the stars of the heavens.
Where are you at?
Verse 17, chapter 22.
No, I'm looking at 12.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let's see. I guess it's all wrapped up in I will make of you a great nation as far as the promise goes. But then this sprinkled in there, you have the multiply you as the stars of heaven. And the sand, which, there's gonna, well, I don't remember, but it gets reaffirmed here as well. And this is Abraham's about done in the narrative. The narrative is about to kick over into Isaac and leave Abraham behind. But at any rate, reaffirmation of the covenant promise, which is summed up with, and in your offspring shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. That is in chapter 12, right off the bat. And in you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. So he reaffirms that part of the promise here, which is probably one of the reasons that Paul focuses on promise and not covenant throughout his writings, but particularly in chapter 4 of Romans. It's all about the promise that was fulfilled in Abraham. Well, the covenant is about land. That's important. The covenant is about land, but the promise upon which the covenant is based transcends the covenant. And it is explicit in the promise that God would extend the blessing to all the nations, which will then be revisited in Christ. And Paul is, through the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, the man who wanted nothing to do with Gentiles, because he was a ferociously Orthodox, Mosaic, Pharisaical, rabbinical Jew, will become the apostle of all the families of the earth being blessed. Hey, the great irony. Hey, Paul, you're going to be instrumental in God's plan, but not for the first part of the covenant. I will make of you a great nation. He's going to make a great nation so that in that nation, all the nations of the earth can be blessed. That's the part that where you're going to come in. And he's going, what? I didn't sign up for that. And God says, I wasn't asking. I didn't ask Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, David, Pickham, Elijah. I didn't ask any of them, and I'm not asking you, Peter, this is the deal. That's what you're gonna do. And then eventually, you're gonna be able to say something like you did in, like you will in Romans chapter 11. Oh, the depth of the wisdom and knowledge of a God, how unsearchable are his judgments and unfathomable his ways. But it's gonna take some time to get there. So that's the scope of the history of redemption, and it's all encapsulated in Genesis chapter 12 in that promise. And he revisits that. It's interesting that he does revisit that part of, you would think that he would be more focused on land. There's no mention of land here. I will multiply your descendants and they will possess the gate of their enemies. But he closes in the sort of the place of what do you call it? Emphasis, the last one. All the nations of the earth will be blessed. That's the place of emphasis, the last one. Which Abraham couldn't care less about at this point. He just wants an heir. And Israel won't care either. Israel will be exclusionary. Israel will be defined by its gatekeeping, by its perimeter, its Mosaic perimeter, to keep the nations out, without any awareness that eventually the plan is to break that barrier down so that the Gentiles, the nations, can come streaming in and experience the blessings that were promised to Abraham, all based in Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. And in you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. So we have a big step toward that here. The text right here implies, right here, this right here, the text implies that the birth of Isaac has worldwide, it is timelessly and geographically significant. It is significant throughout all time and in all places, the birth of Isaac. And he implies that right here. The implications of Isaac's birth are staggering for the whole world. And this plan of redemption just goes on and on and on, while everybody fights their fights and argues their thing and does their science and all this other stuff, and does their DEI and LGBTQ and all these other things. Meanwhile, the unstoppable plan of God marches along, and there's nothing anybody can do to stop it or even slow it down. They can't appear to accelerate it. That's interesting. We can get into that sometime.
I'm probably taking out a side trail here, but I'm thinking next to the birth of Jesus Christ, I can't think of a birth of anybody more significant than Isaac in Scripture. Because of, the relationship, actually, he pictures Christ in a sense that he's the only son, your one and only son. He's going to be offered as sin. He's the son of promise that they waited for.
If you're dealing in births, yeah, we don't really see the Abraham's birth, but if you're dealing in births, that's interesting. If I was gonna be a devil's advocate, so to speak, in a Sunday school class, throw David in there.
Yeah, his birth is significant, but it's not made significant as far as the lead up to it.
No, it's not.
And these are the only two verses I can think of. I mean, Samson, I guess, was promised ahead of time, but then perhaps Samuel, but
Yeah, that's interesting. David was not promised.
no.
However, he has the longest birth narrative in the Bible. Does everybody know what his birth narrative is?
Book of Ruth. Significant.
Yeah. He gets 4 chapters. I think it's 4 chapters. 4 chapters?
Yeah.
But David only came along because the Israelites demanded a king. That's interesting. Does anybody want to talk about that? I know we did a lot of review today, but it's been 3 months. Let's see if I get trashed in the comments on
Well, as far
my
as
math
this
attack.
chapter goes and its importance in the narrative of redemption history, there's just so much that,
It is.
for instance, as I've already mentioned, Isaac being offered as a sacrifice, pictures Christ being offered as a sacrifice. But for Isaac, there was a substitute. which pictures definitely the substitutionary atonement.
Yeah, and you were back to the question of, is Isaac a type of Christ? And I agree with the parallels. And, I'm just not sure what to do with them because nobody else does.
Yeah.
There's, no, I mean, even in Hebrews 11, which I opened up. By faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac. I think Sharon mentioned this back in May. He who had received the promises was in the act of offering up, this is a promise, not the covenant, the promise. Because there's a lot of promises in 12 through, there's more than one promise in 12 through 21. And there it is, his only son. This author knows. He read the text. His only son, of whom it was said, through Isaac shall your offspring be named. He considered that God was able even to raise him from the dead. So the divinely inspired author is reading between the, is divinely, is inspiredly, if I can make up a word, reading between the lines of Genesis. Would raise him, figuratively, figuratively speaking, he received him back again. Very, very similar line of thought to Paul's writings.
Mhm.
And then we talked about James previously, which sends shivers down the spine of a lot of Protestants. How many different ways can you mispronounce Protestants?
Yeah, Luther didn't think that James belonged in the canon.
No, he called it the Epistle of Straw, I think. Well, he didn't get his way. He was important, but he wasn't inspired. So now Abraham he returns and they went to Beersheba and he lived in Beersheba. Which let's go ahead and, Beersheba comes back to Beersheba a lot with Abraham. He seems to have settled there. Right here. Right in the heart of the territory of what will become the territory of Judah. And you can see Hebron, which will be an important city coming up. Not named Hebron at the time. But that's Beersheba right there in the middle of the non-existent territory of Simeon. Simeon will end up getting absorbed by Judah. We will not see that.
So he didn't, I always wondered what happened to Simeon when they divided, but Simeon just, moved with the other 10 tribes north, or?
No, I think it's part of we'll look at the curse of some of what Judah did, what Jacob did in his he blesses all 12 tribes. Some of them are a curse.
Levi and Simeon.
Yeah, for an act that I think frankly they seem to me to be the only two who are demonstrating any honor.
Yeah.
But what do I know? So
Jacob just didn't want to move again.
we'll get to that one. That's the Dinah story.
Yeah.
When the Shechemites, they weren't known as Shechemites at the time.
Muslim.
When they kidnapped the sister Dinah and basically held her for ransom, and the ransom was, you're going to marry him, the son. And Simeon and Levi say, what? Levi?
Yeah.
No, we're not going to put up with that. And they went and slaughtered them all, took the sister back. For which Jacob cursed them. Biblical narrative is complicated. Sometimes I don't know what to make of it. What's that green line up there?
I have no idea.
Got any idea, Robert, what that green line is up there? It's bothering me now that I've noticed it. Okay, let's finish this off. So we can get to 23. So he goes and he lives in Beersheba, and that seems to be where he's settled. After these things, it was told to Abraham, behold, Milcah also has borne children to your brother Nahor out of nowhere. Uz, his firstborn, Buz, his brother, they only rhyme in English, I'm pretty sure. Kemuel, the father of Aram, so you get some Aramite lineage there. Chesed, Hazo, talk about slaughtering Hebrew. Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. And then Bethuel fathered, that's gonna be important. So if you ask, why is he mentioning this? He brings in Nahor.
Are they still back in Ur?
No, they're in,
Haran.
They
Had an Aram. Yep. So he points out that Nahor has been blessed and he's doing well. And I think the point of the story is to get to Bethuel, however you say that. Because coming up shortly is a very, very extended narrative on Abraham getting a wife for Isaac. It's laborious. It's one of these like 3 times told stories. And you're going, my goodness, why are you telling the narrator, why are you telling the story 3 times now? I think it's 3, but we'll see what we do with it when it comes up.
I'm intrigued by that first name in verse 22, Kesed. Isn't that the Hebrew word for mercy or loving?
Righteousness,
Right.
isn't it?
It's the word translated mercy or loving kindness or steadfast love, depending on the translation. I don't know if that's the actual word in that text.
There it is. Yep, I'm wrong. I forget the, I took one semester. Yeah. I took one semester of Hebrew back in 1999, and I knew right away that there was not enough time in my life
Yeah.
to become interested enough in Hebrew to dedicate the time necessary.
According to Blue Letter Bible, it's not the same word.
It's not.
It's as righteousness.
This is
No.
Hesed and it means increase, and it's used
Oh, really?
one time.
Huh, okay,
So it's not the same word. Okay.
yeah. Okay. Michelle saved us from sounding stupid on the, well, no, I still sound stupid on the air screen, but
Let's say something about God's love and kindness. As meaning.
Yeah, apparently what we have is that looks like the Hebrew word for which is chesed. But they probably have a different word here instead of that, which that.
if it's English,
I think,
then, I mean, you don't know. Yeah, you need, if you've ever looked at Hebrew, oh man, it's tough going.
doesn't it go from right to left?
Yes, that's the least of the problem. Yeah, it's a pointed system. There's no, the vowels are points around the consonants. And it is tough going. Yeah, it's difficult.
And the name for God, Yahweh, we don't have any vowels, so we really don't know the correct pronunciation. Guess that.
It wasn't actually pointed until they wrote the Masoretic text. And I don't think it was pointed until like the 1200s. So they backfilled the vowels and based on pronunciation. So if you take an English word like photography, if it never had any vowels, and all it ever was consonants, and you suddenly said, okay, based on the pronunciation, how do you spell this word? You're going to have these things like photography. It's not photography, it's photography. Well, how do you put that in the language? What are the rules? It's the same thing with something like nation. But it isn't photograph, it's photograph. So, yeah. Okay, we're way off. Got to close. Moreover, his concubine, whose name was Reuma, bore these 4 here. So you have a concubine out there, and then he's going to get married again after Rebecca's death. So there's other things going on. None of them matter as far as an heir goes. But you see this multiplication of Abraham, and you can see now what do you want to put it perfectly crassly, the raw material for nations. More than one nation, that's the promise. A multitude of nations are going to come, and this plus his next wife after Sarah dies. So we got to stop here. All right, well, that catches us up. We're being 23 next. So thank you all for joining.
Thank you, Gary.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Gary.